So yes, good afternoon for yet another round of speakers. In this room, track awesome Fabian Kleeberger with the subjects Embedding Design in Agile Teams. Really looking forward to hearing you talk. So I will stop sharing if you can take over at any time.
I will do that. I guess you can see my screen, or I hope at least.
Yes.
Yes. So thank you very much for the opportunity to speak here. Thanks so much for everyone who showed up and made it until here. I know like the conference started at 12, so you heard a few talks already. So I'm going to try to make this engaging and interesting so that you can easily stay awake. And my plan is like I'm aiming for 20 to 25 minutes of talking so that there's at least 20 to 25 minutes of room for discussion for your questions, because I mean, it's a big topic, so I tried to keep it short, and there will be definitely probably questions that you that will arise, so we will answer these afterwards. So yeah, the topic embedding design in agile teams is a big topic that's been discussed for quite a while, and it always causes like problems in organizations. And if I start thinking about it, when I prepared this talk, I thought like, why are we even using Agile in general? And I mean, I'm not going to go in the depths of the Agile Manifesto or the Scrum Guide, but basically what's important for us is we want to avoid unused features, low user value, low business value. And if you think about it, that also means we want to avoid seeing design as an isolated task, because there's already the first misconception that happens pretty often, that we see design as basically something visual, where people or designers make things look good, they make them look pretty, they give them the visual appearance that we basically see in a software product. But basically, that is a very short understanding of design. I think we all learned about what design really is when the term or the buzzword design thinking came into mind, and IDEO started marketing design thinking workshops to business units or to companies, when they basically tried to teach business owners or product managers or also developers how to think like a designer, while they even had designers in the company or in external agencies who already knew how to do that. So if we think about design, design is all the intelligence we have made visible. That means all the knowledge we have about the user, all the knowledge we have about the market, the competition, and we want to make that visible. So a designer is a crucial part, or design is a crucial part of our development process. Therefore, it's really not understandable why we would keep it completely separate and isolated. So just a quick recap, how did this used to happen? Some of you might remember, some of you I see are probably too young to remember that, but worst case, you had basically a brief, then an agency or an internal design organization would lock themselves away for 3 months, come up with a great design. Maybe they even came up with 3 or 4 different design ideas. Then they would present that to you, and then development would start. It was already like a really big improvement when development teams started developing in Agile, but it didn't solve the problem that the design was basically more or less ready, or the product was more or less ready. And then we basically tried to figure that out, but it was always causing confusions, like how do we feedback the feedback to the design team? How does that even get handed over to the development team, and so on? So we're trying to look for ways to avoid that. And I mean, I said this is something that used to happen. Honestly, I mean, I don't know about you, but I still see that happening a lot in organizations, that even though they claim to be agile or they claim to be working in Scrum, they have like at least a design waterfall process that then feeds into an agile development process that then, in my opinion, cannot really be agile anymore, because everything is already decided. So that brings us to the topic of the talk today, embedding design in agile teams. Just very quickly, why is someone like me, a product manager, telling you about design in agile teams? That's mainly because I've seen both extremes, organizations that are very design driven and have a very strong design organization, and organizations that either have not even an own design organization and only work with external agencies, or with very weak design organizations that are centralized and used as a delivery center. And this is something that always, I think, in my work as a consultant, makes my work either harder or less hard, depending on what understanding of design is there. So I find it a very, very crucial topic when it comes to agile transformation, and that's why I came up with the topic for this talk. Another thing that we all need to be aware of is design will happen anyway. So even if we have design decisions externalized, or if we have them like at the beginning of the process and not in an agile process, there will be so many decisions that need to be made. And I think all of you will know the typical development decision when a developer has to decide how to do something like that because the requirements are not specified enough, when a product manager makes a decision. So the design will happen anyways because something needs to be put out there. There will always be someone who has assumptions about what the user will like or what will be feasible or viable for the business. So the design will happen anyway. So the question is, why wouldn't we do that in an intentional way to fully leverage the capabilities of a good design team or a good designer in our team and incorporate that in our agile development? Because then if we don't do that, we're lacking user centricity, we're lacking like a proper feedback loop that feeds back in very short cycles. And we're also lacking the coherence and also the consistency in the product. And that's exactly what we don't want. That's why we basically all are aiming to work in Agile. So what are the three main design organizations that we can see? So there is either a centralized design organization, I call it a delivery center. So you have like a few designers, maybe some user researchers. You have like UX, UI designers. We used to have web designers there that you can more or less brief on what you need. We all know that it's difficult because, first of all, they're very detached from our daily work. We need to really explain a lot to them, and they still won't really understand because they don't know our product or our actual challenge. And second, there will be a lot of like a delay because everybody in the organization wants to get a designer to help them. Everybody in the organization needs something from the design organization. They have their own plan. Most of the time, as we know, marketing will completely like absorb them for like some kind of branding issue. So we see already like it's also difficult because the design specialization doesn't really happen as well. We have the organization that I'm voting for, like embedded designers, where we really have like a designer that is part of our cross-functional development team, sits with us, or now in a remote setting is at least like available all the time, knows exactly about our challenges, is an expert for the product or the product part or area they're working on, and is really like basically almost on the lap of product manager and developer so that they can collaborate constantly. The last thing is more or less like a hybrid of the two things that I just described. I've seen that not as often, but it happens also, I can tell you. So it's basically a centralized design organization that you can book to be embedded for a certain amount of time. This is also here, you can basically on the GIF, you can see how the product team will greet the designer once they arrive in the elevator. So this means we will give you like 1,000 tasks because we're so happy we have a designer for like 4 weeks now, and we will try to make you do everything that we couldn't do in the last time, and then the designer will go away again and we're facing the same problems as we did before. So I think it's pretty obvious, and I mean, I might be very biased here as well, that in the end, I'm a big fan of the embedded designer in Agile. I mean, that's also the title of the talk. So this is what I'm gonna go a little bit more into detail. We have on the one side the Agile principles, on the other side design thinking, as I said. If you look in both, I would say like manifestos or the main steps or principles of these these methods, you can already see they're pretty much the same. So there's not much synchronization that we have to do, or much alignment, because they basically both work with the build, measure, learn cycle or development loop, so that we can see that they're easily alignable, and they easily can be put together, and they can even elevate each other. So what I did for this talk is I went on the websites of the biggest consultancies for agile transformation, or the biggest business consultancies, and just checked what are the main advantages they try to sell their clients, why they should work in agile. So that's efficiency, quality, flexibility, achievement, empowerment, collaboration, and ownership. I know you will now say like some things like user centricity are missing here. That was not clearly pointed out. I guess it's probably part of the quality, or also about the achievement. So I think it's in there, but these are the ones that are used, and I'm going to show you now how design will even help us reach these easier and better. You can basically group these. So you have like on the business, the team, and the individual level. The business, you have the efficiency, quality, and flexibility. So when it comes to flexibility, we can see that one of the main principles of Agile is that we want to be flexible to any change that arises. If we always have to wait for a designer that's not part of our team, we cannot be as flexible. So then there's the question, will we just wait and stop developing at that point, or will we basically just go through with it and then fix things in the next iteration? So with an embedded designer, we're definitely better off. Same goes for the quality. I mean, the designer is the one who has all the user knowledge, who has all the capabilities and all the skills to do user research, to be very close to the user, and to feed that back in our development. I know that, for example, in the Scrum Guide, it talks about the PO being the user expert, but at least in my practice, I see a lot that product owners or also product managers, they possess some skills, but it's not part of their, I would say, training or their studies, even more because there is no classical product management or product ownership studies. So the designer is really here the right person to do that. And when it comes to efficiency, I mean, as I said before, there's nothing more efficient than having a designer that I can call at any time, and I basically have my answer within 2 minutes, or the designer does a redesign that has been necessary within like 30 minutes. On the team level, we have achievement and empowerment. For the empowerment, I mean, I think it's obvious that a team is way more empowered if it can basically, without being dependent on another part of the organization, make decisions in a very, very short loop. The same goes for the achievement. I mean, we have really like a team feeling where the whole team is responsible of achieving the goals, be it OKRs, be it like objectives that the business gives them or whatever. But basically the whole team can work together, and we don't have what we see in organizations a lot, the blame game where somebody says, yeah, but the design organization didn't come up with this in the right way, or they didn't come up with this at the right time. So we can really, in the end, have a team that's fully empowered and responsible and accountable for their achievements. On the personal level or in the individual level, we have like a full set of ownership, because like I said, the team, the designer, the developer, they own that, and they will definitely understand why certain decisions have been made, because they have been made together. Collaboration, it's just here for completeness, but I think it's very obvious or very clear that a team that possesses all the skills and all the roles that are necessary to do what their purpose is can collaborate much better. So as I said, that is the reason why design should be definitely intentional and not just left to coincidence. The risks that we are tackling, and you probably know these because Marty Kagan talks about these a lot, is we have the usability risk, the feasibility risk, the value, and the viability risk. So these are the ones that are tackled by the three main roles that our product team has then. You can see design is very important because the magic happens where they all intersect, where we can say what we will develop definitely addressed all four risks, and we made sure that we mitigate these. And in the end, this will lead to exactly why we work in Agile. It will lead to shorter iterations. It will lead to better outcomes. It will lead to less waste production. So now some of you will ask, yeah, but isn't that something that we always did? I mean, we had the discovery and the delivery, basically. So on the discovery side, that was where design always was very strong. They would work with the product manager and they would do all their magic from exploratory user research, desk research, user interviews, diary studies, contextual inquiry, usability testing, and so on. And then at some point, let's assume an issue tracking tool like Jira is used, the ticket would be ready, or the requirements and acceptance criteria would be there. And then delivery starts, and that's where we started working in Agile. So what is now the new thing about this approach, and why is this even so necessary? I would say the reason is because what we see a lot is that these two things don't work very well synchronized. And the other thing is that there is a huge gap in between, which is basically made clear by the word that's mostly used for that, called handoff, where a product manager or product designer are handing off everything they did in discovery, and then delivery starts and everybody should just deal with what is there, especially when the designer is not part of the team. What's once written in the ticket has to be taken, at least for this sprint, because the designer might already be on another team or on another task. That's why I personally think we should not talk about discovery and delivery, but we should talk about product development. I know it's a little bit tricky because development also is used in terms of software development. But for me, I think we should not regard it as two separate processes, but one complete process. And that also means everybody, be it product management, design, or software engineer or developer, should be part of the whole process, because it will make information be evenly distributed in the team. It will make decisions easier. It will make understanding easier, and it will greatly foster also the motivation and the happiness or the fun in the team, because everybody knows exactly what's happening and why it is happening, and everybody can make well-informed decisions at any time. So now you will ask, okay, that is understandable, but I have all these questions about all these things that we, when we talk about Agile, have in mind. So there's the sprint, the backlog, handoff or handover, as I just said, the release, feedback requirements. What about all our ceremonies? How does collaboration really work? This talk, unfortunately, is a little bit too short to get into detail about all of these. That's why I'm just trying to take the three main things that I see over and over again being like crucial in development or in the work in organizations. So one is about the actual organization, because the question there is always like, okay, you're talking a lot about empowered teams, but we are also having a design organization. We have a head of design, for example. We have a design system. We have like a branding team that also then feeds into the product branding or the product appearance. So how does that work? And I think it's crucial there to see that it's basically not any different than it is for development of product. We have like a direct report system where a design organization or a designer reports to a head of design. They can work on their design system. They can work on other like overarching strategy or that design strategy tasks. But the designer will basically be part of an empowered team where he is then like doing his or her everyday work and does basically what the team requires. About the process, one fear that I constantly see is that just-in-time design, meaning we don't have any designs ready once the sprint starts, and the designer will basically work on the same tasks or features that will develop in that sprint, is a must. This mainly comes from the fact that ThoughtWorks, the big IT consultancy, that also is one of the very early embedded design and agile development consultancies, works just in time, which means once the sprint starts, the development team or the engineers will start working on, for example, like back-end tasks or infrastructure tasks, and the designer will design at that point, and then later in the sprint, these designs will be used to do, for example, the front end. But in my personal opinion, there's nothing bad with working like a sprint or 2 sprints ahead. It also depends a lot on the agile maturity of the team. But one could argue, obviously, is this really working in agile if, for example, all the designs are already ready once the sprint starts? But I personally think you just have to see it like 2 different tracks. I mean, there is this concept of dual track agile, which is more or less also not completely in sync, because you always discover stuff in the sprint that will probably feed into the next or in one of the sprints later down the road. So for me personally, I always suggest teams to start with something like 2 sprints ahead of design, and then see how you can get closer to anything that is close to just-in-time design. I think it's like good to have it as a goal in mind. I don't think it's bad if you never reach it, but I think it's just important that you basically are flexible enough to change the plan, which is like one of the main agile principles anyways. About the tools, this is something quick to answer. So there are so many discovery tools, especially now that product discovery becomes a big topic, and we can see that on LinkedIn, even so many like LinkedIn influencers claimed the discovery topic for themselves. So we have like Jira product discovery or product board or I don't know, whatever. And we have the delivery tools, most common probably the normal Jira issue tracking tool. Me personally, I don't have a preference, and I think it's completely up to the team. In my experience, it's mostly easier if you try to keep things separate and have like something that integrates well with each other, because otherwise, for example, your backlog might completely clutter. If any idea, if it's validated or not, if there have been user interviews or not, or user research or not, or if it's already been like decided that it feeds into the objectives that your organization has right now, is in your product backlog that the development team will use as well. But I think it's completely up to you or to your team how to do that, as long as it's feasible and doesn't cause too much confusion. Yeah, so that is a very quick insight into how to embed design in agile teams. I know that there's so much more to say, and there's so much more to think of or to take care of, and it's very, very individual as well when it comes to your own organizations or the teams that you work with. So there is no one-size-fits-all approach, and I definitely wouldn't say that there is it's only good if you do this and it's not good if you do that kind of judgment, because there are definitely enough shades in between one extreme and another extreme that might make sense depending on the size of the organization, or also like the kind of products the organization works on. Is it like a very well established bigger organization with like traditional processes? Is it like at the beginning or at the end of the agile transformation? So there are so many things that might make a difference. But I'm going to stop here now and leave the stage to you, either for discussion or for your questions. I'm looking forward to those. Thank you very much.
You can just unmute yourself if you have a question.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand you.
Yeah, you can just unmute yourself to all the participants. You've got quite a bit of time to ask Fabian the questions. Got a few remarks from Koen. You want to maybe want to have a word with Fabian, Koen?
I can, if nobody has something right now, address what's in the chat there.
Yeah, Koen just unmuted himself.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
I was on mute, of course. Yeah. So I had a question in the chat. So I fully understand the need of including a designer in a project. My experience, though, is that designers often have a lot of work or enough work to do to keep them occupied at the beginning or start of a project. but when the project progresses, there's little need / use of them later on, because projects tend to become more techy. So then what?
So you're right. Like in the beginning, I think we need to make sure that designers are not I would say, overcomplicating the work at the beginning. This is something that I see a lot, because I mean, you can discover a lot in the beginning, and you can also make the project very, very big, even though it's not even like doesn't exist in code or something. And then later on, as you say, I mean, there is a lot to do on the tech side, and designers tend to be not so much included, because there's, for example, like a lot of stuff happening in the backend where you basically are not really needing the designer. You just need to know like what is this going to result in. So I always suggest that either you at this point have a designer, and I think you suggested that in the chat as well, have the designer like for the inception phase, like working for several products or teams on different stages of products. Or the other thing is that you already try to understand where are we going to go with this product. And for that, it's always important, and that is something that I see organizations lack a lot, and to have a clear strategy, like why are we even building this product? Is it like because we want to have like I don't know, build out our reputation as a digital company, or is it because we want to just sunset an old product and basically have a new product that's now working in the cloud? Because for these things, it's actually really important to understand where this goes. Because, for example, let's take the last possibility that I mentioned. You just want to have like a legacy product or like a suite of legacy products, as a company that I recently worked with had, and you want to elevate this to the cloud, but you don't really want to change the functionality. You know, this is working well. It integrates well with what other stuff we have. Then you can definitely see, is it important to embed a designer here, or is it important that we even like have an internal designer, because maybe it's just something that we can then externalize and have an agency who says like, we just need a rebranding or redesign of these legacy tools into one UI, but that's everything that we are expecting, and we don't really want to take more time or more budget than needed, and maybe tweak the software or improve what we know is not working. So that's why I'm saying I think it's really important to look at the individual case, because I personally don't think you can always say we need to hire internal designers. I think if you really have a product that should be developed and developed and developed towards more success, we want to, I don't know, initiate more user growth, we want to initiate more user engagement, and we need designers to figure out how to do that, because we, I don't know, want to experiment with gamification, for example. Then I think you really want to embed a designer, because otherwise it becomes exactly the problem that I stated, that you have like very, very long feedback loops where a lot of information is lost. But for something that is very straightforward and very, very clear, that you just want to redesign, or the product needs to be adjusted to the new brand that you just brand design that you just got. I think for this, it's a little bit of like over engineered if you like embed a designer and the designer tries to get to work all the time. Because I mean, yeah, designer can keep themselves busy easily. There's always user interviews. There's always like any user research topics, or like, I don't know, design improvements you can do. And if you look at products, especially from Silicon Valley, that are very well funded, you can even see that there, in my opinion, often there's a lot of redesign happening just for the sake of redesign, because there's a big design organization, and you wonder why there's like the third redesign in a year, because it's not really adding any user value. So absolutely right, I agree, absolutely.
Okay, thanks for sharing.
Any other questions? Or remarks or anything? If not, you had something else to share, Fabian?
Yes, there's somebody wrote about Jeff Patton's article, the dual track is not dual track. That's absolutely true. And I think this is something that I personally have never seen. Probably I'm lucky, but I only see it as a very beneficial thing when development, product, and design work so close together, because they can really elevate each other and they can really like show each other like why are we doing things the way we are doing them. I think especially for an engineer, there is nothing worse than to be in a situation where you don't really understand why you're doing something the way you are doing, because there are always like a lot of decisions to be made. For example, I don't know, how do you structure your database, or how will your data model be in the backend? That will depend on why are we doing this, or where are we planning to go with this. And I've seen it like a few times that really like I would say suboptimal development decisions have been made just because there has not been like a really close connection with design, and it wasn't very clear why we're doing or why we're developing what we're developing. And that's why I think dual track is great. I personally struggle a little bit with the ideal way of doing dual track agile, because it suggests that you have like one track that only does discovery and one track that only does delivery at the same time. And obviously people can change in between these. But I personally think, or I've never seen an organization that really could afford or was willing to afford so many people in a product team that you could really part this. And I personally don't think it's necessary, because there will always be someone else in the lead. I mean, as we saw before, for discovery, it will probably still be the designer who's in the lead for what are the activities that are planned or what are the workshops that are being scheduled. And then we will see if engineers can join these, and it obviously doesn't have to be the whole engineering team. It can be like just one or two, so that we get the perspective. And the other way, when it comes to sprint planning or to refinements, it will be probably still owned by the engineering team or by the engineers, and then the designer will join to give their perspective. So I think this is absolutely feasible, and you don't need the real dual track, because what I also saw happening when it's like the ideal described dual track development, that you have like the same gap that you're trying to avoid again, that the discovery team doesn't really feed all the information to the delivery team, and not all the information from the delivery team gets fed back to the discovery team. So I think if everybody basically works on every thing, and the team is rather small, like I would say 4 to 6 engineers, a designer, and a product owner or product manager is ideal, rather 4 than 6 normally, in my opinion, then this works very, very well. Then there's another question. Do you dual track your refinement discovery, or do you stagger your sprints? Maybe you can elaborate on this, because I'm not sure I understand the question completely.
Sorry, I was looking for my unmute button. Yeah, it's a similar question to the previous one, just whether you have experience with doing dual track within a single team, or whether you have a design team, well, kind of a design sub-team that's working one sprint ahead.
Well, I have tried like a lot of like different ideas there, because I think what we also need to see is like even in the design team, we have different specialists. So we have like people that are very strong on UX design, people that are very strong on UI design or like visual design. And then we have like people that are very strong on user research. And depending on the size of the organization, these will also be able to work like in different tracks. For example, one model that I really value that I have worked with at one of my previous employers is that there was an own user research track, and we had like a big product portfolio. So the scheduling their user interviews or all the user touch points they would like be able to do by themselves, and would then basically go to each team and say like, do you have something that we can discuss with users right now, is there anything that you need for your development, so that this basically has been taken care of, because it otherwise would be probably very inefficient if every team would have their own user researcher who approaches 5 users, tries to schedule interviews with these, then another team does the same. Maybe the questions are somehow overlapping, maybe it's the same users, and these are not very happy if they get approached by 5 teams within like a month and have to, like, worst case, even answer the same questions. So I think for user research, it definitely makes sense that you have like an own track. Or the design, I mean, you can really see different shades there, how you want to go. For example, if you have like a product portfolio and you have like a very strong or mature design system that you rely on, then it's very easy, because every team can more or less work in isolation, because the design system already is like very mature. Everybody knows, I don't know, a dropdown looks like this, I don't know, a intro screen or an empty screen has to look like this, so it's very easy. But especially now that that a lot of companies are still in the process of establishing a design system or like building their design system, I think it's very important to not leave too much autonomy to the designer in each team at that point, because there needs to be a constant alignment, because a lot of components, for example, for your design system will be used for the first time, and it needs to be decided how will we make these look, or how will we make these function. So I think in that case, you really want to like streamline that somehow. But unfortunately, I think it really depends on like your budget and also the amount of people that you have in your team. But I am personally always like a fan of having as much alignment as possible, but you can have it like on different levels. So I don't think that there needs to be these crazy meetings where, like, I don't know, 5 product teams are in one call and everybody talks about everything. But I think it's very important that your designers of every team like meet at least once a week, your product managers or product owners of every team meet at least once a week, and somehow the developers do that as well. I mean, that can be divided by front and back end or whatever your organization allows. And then they can make their own plans. So basically, I think everybody should have like a split personality. Ideally, like they should have like one part of their personality is like, I'm part of team A or team B or whatever, and one part is I'm part of the design team or the product team or the development team, and they somehow need to make this work inside of them, like with both the responsibilities and both the meetings and both the tasks that are necessary to do their work well. And I think that's really something I would not like to prescribe normally, because first of all, it's very complex. I wouldn't even know how. And I think our team members are the experts there, so they really know, or they will make it work, because each team has their own way in the end. Like I normally don't really find it important the teams, or every team does everything exactly the same way. I mean, we have certain standards, but in the end, it doesn't really matter as long as the result is really good. Any other questions or?
Guess not. Okay, well, thanks a lot, Fabian. Really interesting.
Welcome.
Quite a few questions, lots of interest by the looks of it. So, and this will be recorded for your information, everybody. So we will post that on the Serious Scrum YouTube and send you all the link so you can share it or watch it again. So yeah, thank you very much. I'll stop recording and start sharing my screen again to announce the next couple of speakers.
Thank you very much.